It began with a star that fell from the heavens, crashing into the distant north with a thunderous quake. For the villagers of White Ridge, it was seen as an omen of doom. Little did they know how right they were. For his entire life, Gull the woodcutter had lived in the lonely little village of White Ridge, a quaint town nestled alone in a valley. It was bordered by a great and ominous forest, the Whispering Woods. Between the rustling trees of this forest, the wind carried whispers, whispers that had no source one could see, whispers that made no sense one could tell. There were other dangers in the forest, to be sure, but it was the whispers that gave the woods its name, and it was the whispers that most unsettled the villagers. It was in these woods that Gull spent most of his time. The village needed firewood, and he was one of the few able-bodied men not afraid to walk between the unsettling trees deep into the woods for good timber. Though he had a bad leg and was missing a finger or two, Gull took to woodcutting well, as it made him strong, gave him purpose. On many days when Gull is out tree cutting, he's joined by his younger sister, Greensleeves. Greensleeves was a simple girl, one who felt more at home in the woods with the animals than in the village with the people. In part, it was because she was like an animal herself. She was a simple girl, communicating only in simple noises and skidding about, chasing after whatever interested her. Greensleeves earned her nickname for how she frolicked in the grasses and the bushes, dyeing her clothes in the colors of nature. It was a day like any other when everything changed, when Gull heard noises in the distance, loud booms like the sound of distant thunder, and he spotted something near the village, a floating balloon. Rushing back to White Ridge, Gull was horrified to discover his home was caught between two wizards and their summoned armies. Strange knights and barbarians fought against one another as giants and mechanical beasts clashed. The balloon he spotted earlier was piloted by vicious goblins, and all around, chaos ensued. Gull had never encountered wizards before. He had never been out of White Ridge before, but he acted fast to try and save his family and neighbors. What followed was a desperate struggle, at first merely for survival, but quickly it became an attempt to repel the monsters that assailed his home. Securing Greensleeves away, Gull made his way into the village right as the soldiers, loosed by one wizard, took to looting, threatening the people of White Ridge. Gull intervened as a group of summoned men attempted to have their way with one of the village girls, Cowslip, a farmer's daughter, and together the pair fought off the armed men before going to rejoin their families. Briefly, Gull met with his younger brother, Sparrowhawk, and more fighting commenced, the villagers of White Ridge showing immense strength of will and solidarity against the men that attacked them. But the bravery of peasants would not be enough to delay the might of wizardry. All of a sudden, a great weakness overtook the people. Struggling to stay awake, to even stay on his feet, Gull was horrified to see stones raining down from the sky. Drained of all his strength, Gull could do nothing but attempt to shield his mother with his body as darkness took him. It was dark when Gull awoke, the glimmer moon only just rising in the distance. His first thoughts were of his family, and he didn't have to search long to find what happened to them. His mother was cold and still on the ground, her life drained by magic. His father, only a short distance away, was dead as well, his head crushed by a fallen stone. The rest of the villagers had not fared much better, with many people dead or unmoving, stricken by some mysterious illness. The village itself was a wreck, the magic cast by the wizards reducing it to a ruin that could hardly be recognized. The battle was over, but White Ridge was gone, hardly recognizable after its devastation. Knowing only grief and fury and loss, Gol roared to the heavens. Though the battle had concluded, Gol's struggle had not. In the aftermath of the fighting, Gol set to work, knowing that sitting idle would do him no good. A two-headed giant had been abandoned on the battlefield, and Gol found it being assailed by a Sengir vampire. The woodcutter tried to fight off the undead monster, but found himself being drained too, nearly dying until a centaur, also left behind by the fighting wizards, saved him. Remembering how these summoned monsters played a hand in the destruction of his home, Gol had only words of anger for his rescuer, before reuniting with Greensleeves and trying to plan out the future of what survivors remained. Unfortunately, there were about to be a few less survivors. Plague-ridden rats, more leftovers from the wizard duel, had settled in the ruins of the village, the disease they carried killing more of the survivors, including Cowslip, the farm girl whom Gol had just started to grow feelings for. Seeing no more sense in staying in the ruins of White Ridge, the handful of villagers that survived departed to try their luck elsewhere. Gol, stubborn, remained behind, taking Greensleeves with him into the Whispering Woods. And so it was that, in just one day, Gol lost everything he had ever known. Their campfire would be visited several times that night. The giant Gol previously saved, Liko, as well as the centaur, Helki, and her mate, Holib. By now, Gol understood that the creatures summoned by wizards were as helpless as his family was. They were compelled by magic to fight, regardless of their desires. Apologizing for his earlier rudeness, Gol welcomed these strange folk to his camp. Another visitor to the camp was a goblin, Eggsucker, though he was chased off after trying to steal Gol's axe. The strangest visitor Gol received, however, was one of the wizards. Enraged, the woodcutter charged, for even with his injuries, he was confident he could slay the wizard if his axe hit home. But each time he tried, he found himself on the ground, muscles spasming. The wizard, who introduced himself as Towser, explained that he was using magic to repel Gol's attack. Furthermore, he claimed that his part in the earlier fight, the one that saw White Ridge destroyed, was purely defensive, and that he never meant harm to come to the villagers. As a show of good faith, Towser used his magic to send Liko back to his home. When that was done, Towser turned to Gol and explained that he wanted to hire the man as a mule driver for his caravan. His previous animal tender was killed in the duel, and he offered considerable pay for the work. Though Gol was still seething in his hatred of wizards, he knew he could not simply rot here in the Whispering Woods with his sister. So, the next day, he accepted Towser's offer, and after the wizards sent Helki and Holib home as well, the caravan was off, the wizards' party heading north for their next destination. And so it was that Gol found himself in the employ of a wizard, with his next few days being busy tending to the animals and helping to navigate the harsh terrain of the Whispering Woods. During this time, Gol became acquainted with his traveling companions. Towser's entourage included a number of interesting people. There were bodyguards and a cook, a chore boy too, as was normal, but there were also dancing girls the wizard entertained himself with, an astrologer and a bard. Gull came to know the names of most of the party in due time, getting to know them all, some better than others. One of the guards, a bully named Kem, picked a fight with Gull not long after the woodcutter joined the caravan, though Gull's quick hand and whip humiliated the man. This display of guts and skill impressed many of the others, including one of the dancer girls, Lily, who quickly took a liking to Gull. For his part, Gull was not too comfortable with growing affectionate for another, especially so soon after his tragedy, but Lily was a persistent admirer, eventually getting Gull to give in and accept her affections. Kem, it turned out, was persistent too, attacking Gull at night with the help of his ally Chad, and Gull, as it turned out, wasn't without allies of his own, another bodyguard named Morven coming to his aid. Of course, what ended the attacks was ultimately the anger of Towser, who despised delays on their journey and promised to punish anyone else who stepped out of line. Speaking of their journey, Towser's destination lay far to the north, deeper and deeper into the Whispering Woods, until the wagon came to a patch of forest that had been burned away. In the center of the devastation lay a crater, the location where a star had fallen from the heavens. For 4 days, the company took turns digging in this crater, looking for Towser's prize. In what little free time they had, Gull became closer with Lily, Morven, as well as the chore boy, Stigger. Eventually, their work was done. Out of the crater they pulled a strange box, an artifact that none save Towser could make sense of. This, to the wizard's delight, was no mere fallen star. This was a mana vault, a precious artifact of great power. The party barely had any time to rest from their labors. That night, the camp suddenly came under attack, a rival wizard having summoned monsters to assail Towser's group. Zombies, lions, and knights attacked by moonlight. A desperate struggle for survival had begun. Gull managed to fight off lions that had attacked the horses and donkeys, sustaining injuries but remaining on his feet. But this was only the beginning. One of the Black Knights had grabbed Lily, had run off with her as a captive. Chasing the man down, Gull managed to defeat 3 of the knights and rescued the dancing girl. By the light of the moon, this pair tiptoed their way across the battlefield, accidentally coming close to the enemy camp before eventually managing to return to their own. As they traveled, something happened that gave Gull pause. He was passed by the centaurs from before, Helki and Holib, who claimed that they were once again the captives of wizardry. How could this be true if Towser sent them home? Had Towser summoned them? Putting those thoughts aside for now, Gull focused on returning Lily to camp. It seemed the battle was over, but one last surprise lay in wait this night. The enemy wizard had sent over an avatar, an armored incarnation of his will, to attack Towser's camp directly. This armored titan strode into Towser's camp, kidnapping Lily again, as well as Greensleeves. Gull could have met his end here, the avatar almost crushing him underfoot, but a summoned Fungusaur appeared, killing the avatar and saving the girls before disappearing. The battle over, Gull took the opportunity to demand answers from Towser. Why had the centaurs been summoned, and why did it seem like so many of Towser's spells match with those that killed his family? The wizard explained that he had simply summoned centaurs in general and had no way of knowing that Helke and Holib would be called. As for the other spells, he waved off such concerns with honeyed words, bidding Gull rest from his exhaustion. Leaving the site of the battle behind them, Towser's caravan made their way towards the coast, traveling through harsh terrain to get to their destination as fast as possible. During the trip, the caravan passed by a large, treacherous swamp. Here, Towser hoped to find some black lotuses, but other dangers lay in the muck as well. Once night fell, Kem was lured from camp by the lights of will-o'-the-wisps, and Gull rushed out alongside Chad and Greensleeves to try and save him. They would find the man held captive by sedge trolls. With the help of a giant badger that suddenly appeared, Gull and company managed to slay the trolls and rescue Kem, bringing him back to camp before continuing on their way. At long last, the caravan was out of the dense forest of the Whispering Woods, and Gull got to see the ocean with his own eyes, as well as the seagulls that he was named after. Moreover, the party stopped at a sight Gull had never imagined: a coastal town, one grander and more magnificent than he thought was possible. The greatest surprise, however, came not long after reaching the coast. Greensleeves began to talk. For her entire life, Gull's sister had communicated in nothing but chirps and mewlings like wild animals, never seeming to understand the words of people. Gull and the other villagers just assumed Greensleeves was simple-minded, brain-addled, and touched in the head. But now, though it was a struggle, she could speak, and she explained that it was the whispers of the woods that fogged her thoughts. Now that she was away from the trees, she could start to make sense of the words in her head. Gull had little time to enjoy Greensleeves' voice, however. As the siblings and Lily were exploring the city, they found themselves attacked by Towser's bodyguards who abducted the girls. Gull managed to kill the assailants before running to hide, but the wizard himself caught up with them, an army of summoned barbarians in tow. Gull was knocked unconscious, and when he came to, he was tied up back at camp. Furious, the woodcutter cursed out Towser for what he was: a liar and a murderer, a fiend and a bastard. The wizard, on his part, had little care for Gull and simply ordered the man's death, having plans of his own for Greensleeves and no more need of Gull. Before he could be killed, Gull was cut free by Stigger and, alongside Morven, made to try and slay Towser. But before the wizard could be cut down, a bright light took up all of Gull's vision, and the world shifted. Gull found himself standing on a sandy beach, a tropical island somewhere far away. For, while it had been night just moments ago, here it was daytime. Beside him were Morven and Stigger, also sent away by the wizard's spell. As the trio explored the island, they discovered others: the centaurs Helke and Holib, the giant Liko, Eggsucker, and more. Warriors, orcs, a clockwork steed, strange humanoid ants. All were sent here by the wizard Towser, all deceived, all imprisoned. Most of the other prisoners by now had given up and accepted their grim fates. Towser could summon any of them at any time, force them to fight against their will with his magic, Unable to resist the wizard, these assembled fighters gave up on any hope of freedom. But not Gull. Filled with fury and determination, the woodcutter rallied the island's inhabitants, forming a plan to be ready at all times for the wizard's summons. They could not resist the call to fight, true, but Towser's spell only forced them to fight the enemy they were called to battle. If they were ready at all times, they could slay their foes, then turn on the wizard. It wasn't much of a chance, but it was worth trying. And so, this ragtag bunch of monsters and warriors spent every waking moment preparing, waiting for the right time. And after what felt like weeks, finally, someone was summoned. It was Gull. When the light of the spell faded, Gull found himself standing on seaside cliffs, a grand basalt monolith towering over the area, an altar below it. Greensleeves was tied to the altar, Towser poised over her with a knife. Next to Gull was Lily, looking just as confused as he was. Suddenly, so much made sense. Lily was a wizard. She didn't know it, but Towser did, which is why he hired her in the first place. It's the same reason he hired Gull. The wizard didn't need a mule driver. He could have had any of his bodyguards do the work. But Towser wanted to bring Gull along, because Gull would bring his sister along. His sister, who was also a wizard. And Towser wanted to sacrifice her to the mana vault. Leaping into action, Gull rushed to save Greensleeves, the bully Kim having a change of heart and helping to fight Towser's men. Greensleeves herself began activating her untrained magic, summoning beasts and folk that she had met to aid her. Giant badgers appeared. Morven was summoned, as was Stigger riding the clockwork beast, the giant Liko, Eggsucker, and even a squadron of elvish archers. A true wizard's duel was being waged between Greensleeves and Towser, but unfortunately, Towser was more experienced and Greensleeves had little control over her summons. Grizzlies and wolves were just as likely to attack her allies as her enemies, and Towser had many spells and artifacts up his sleeve. The situation was looking grim. Towser slowly whittling down Greensleeves' forces. Gull and the others had their stamina pushed to their limits, and it seemed inevitable that they would lose their lives. But Greensleeves cast one final spell, recalling a tremor she felt when she was younger. An earthquake shook the field, giving the fighters room to breathe. Unbeknown to Greensleeves, however, was the true devastation of her spell. The earthquake caused a great tsunami to form off the coast, one that threatened to crush everything in its path. Knowing what was coming, Morven rushed the others to the highest ground they could reach, shoving Gull, Greensleeves, and Stigger into a narrow cave before having Greensleeves cast a wall of brambles to seal it shut. And then the wave was upon them. The story ends after the devastation of the tidal wave washed away the battle. Kem and Morven lost their lives to the wave, but Morven's quick thinking spared the lives of the others. Most of Towser's camp was wiped out by the wave, though Lily survived thanks to her own innate magic. As for Towser himself, the wizard was nowhere to be seen. He fled the battle once the tsunami peaked over the horizon, dropping the mana vault as he did so. Sitting around a campfire that night, Gull and the other survivors, Lily, Greensleeves, Stigger, Liko, the centaurs, they agreed to band together to form an army. So much devastation and suffering had been caused by the callous whims of wizards, and they vowed to put a stop to it together. Whispering Woods is the second Magic the Gathering novel to be released, as well as the first entry in the Greensleeves trilogy, and it is quite the journey. I've got to say that reading this story after Arena, I definitely enjoyed this one more. It helps, I think, that the main character is so relatable. Gull isn't some grand wizard slinging spells. He's a normal guy, a woodcutter just trying to fend for his family. Hell, he's not even that healthy. He's got a bum knee, he's missing fingers, and he relies on tenacity and guts more than skill and strength to win his fights. Arena is a novel that gave most of its focus to its larger-than-life anti-hero, with the common man being at best useful tools in Garth's plans, or at worst, acceptable losses on his crusade. The Whispering Woods, in turn, focuses on the common man's viewpoint in a world where wizards leave devastation wherever they go. Unlike Arena, which is a revenge tale featuring a powerful, quick-witted wizard who seems to always have another plan, Whispering Woods is the classic hero's journey featuring a normal guy who never really knows exactly what's going on, and while we're told about the horrors of Garth's past through dialogue and brief flashbacks, here we are shown Gull's suffering in gruesome detail. Seriously, like a solid 25% of this book is just this one man experiencing a trauma conga line that never seems to end. The dude's a trooper and he pushes through the hardships, but man, if suffering builds character, then Gull is the character. Basically, this novel is an adventure story with a lot of Gull torture mixed in. Clayton Emery, did Gull hurt you? Why do you hate Gull? Main character torture aside, I want to comment that, like Arena, the book isn't exactly perfect, but it is a fun read, and I personally really liked it. Emery shares the skill of the cliffhanger, with each chapter ending making you want to keep reading, which is always a delight, and I absolutely love complimenting it when I experience it. The book itself ends on a pretty obvious sequel hook, and I could not be more excited to move on to Shattered Chains after this wonderful setup. It's also an absolute treat from a world-building perspective. Arena spent almost the entire novel contained within one city, and while we do get world-building in that book, Whispering Woods provides us with so much more. You'll be glad to know that this book does share its world with Arena. Estark is name-dropped at one point, and mention of the arena deathmatches is made, and the card game references continue as well, with many summons in the book being lifted directly from the game, and what's better, some of the summons in the book do get their own cards. Yeah, that's right, the Giant Badger and Windseeker Centaur cards appear here first as summons that Greensleeves calls to her aid during the final fight, which I think is just great. The final connection to the card game is itself a big one, with Urza and Mishra both getting name-dropped throughout the dialogue as curses and exclamations. Curses said in Urza's name get to be a bit more creative, mind you, with my favorite being Urza's Utters. Yes, those two words are in the book together. No, I will not give context, it wouldn't help anyway. Just go ahead and add that to your vocabulary. Urza's Utters. The final thing I want to note is that magic is definitely handled differently here in comparison to Arena. Unlike the amulets that wizards waged in the first novel, here spells are just kinda done. Towser and the other mages can summon forth any creature they've contacted with, and Towser himself sketches his spells into a book he keeps on hand at all times. Greensleeves seems to be able to just cast magic by focusing on her memories, and Lily prays real hard to get the effect she desires. It's kind of odd, kind of strange, difficult to describe, but I think that it's okay for magic to be odd and strange, and I feel like the amulet method would have probably messed with the story. Overall, I really enjoyed this novel, and it left me excited to dive into the sequel. I give it an 8 out of 10. Thanks to Gull just being such a great protagonist, and thanks to, again, Urza's Utters. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed, then why not leave a like, subscribe to the channel, or share the video with a friend. Your actions go a long way towards helping the channel grow and fight that algorithm. If you want to support me directly, why not consider checking out my Patreon? Patrons get early access to videos just like this, and their help is truly appreciated. Thanks again, and have a great day.